Welcome back to our YouTube video series about historical recipes. My name is Katie O'Hara, Visitor Services Assistant at the Elkhart County Historical Museum. For today's episode, I'm going to show you how to make sugarless gingerbread cookies. I found the recipe in the October 1945 issue of the C.G. Conn employee newsletter, the Ameri-Conn. I found the sugarless gingerbread cookie recipe in a monthly newsletter published by the employees at C.G. Conn in Elkhart, Indiana. While C.G. Conn was primarily known as the manufacturer of musical instruments, during the war period from 1942 to 1945, the company ceased production of instruments for civilian use to manufacture brass components for military instrumentation, such as compasses and altimeters. Their monthly newsletter, called the Ameri-Conn, kept employees informed about events, policies, and other developments. Some of the language contained in the newsletter reflected prevailing attitudes about gender at the time. For instance, one section, called Strictly for the Girls, offers advice on how to maintain a clean household appliances, how to prevent colds and illnesses, how to stretch food rations, and how to save money. As I was paging through the October 1945 issue of the Ameri-Conn newsletter where I obtained the recipe, the contributors' sense of relief and optimism from the war coming to an end was plain to see. However, people continued to feel the effects of the rationing program created by the U.S. government. This rationing program had restricted certain commodities like gasoline, butter, sugar, canned milk, and other items to ensure the armed forces would receive enough supplies during World War II. The rationing program ended in the U.S. when World War II came to a close, yet various goods remained in short supply for months after the war due to years of pent-up demand. By the end of 1945, sugar was the only commodity being rationed, as demonstrated by the title of our recipe, Sugarless Gingerbread. The sugar restriction ended in June 1947. The rationing program in the U.S. was developed with the idea that all Americans, regardless of economic status, were able to access the same amount of coffee, meat, sugar, and fat. However, this wasn't always a reality, especially for people of color and other marginalized communities. POC faced a multitude of challenges related to unequal distribution. Their communities had more limited access to adequately stocked stores and ration books that were necessary to purchase those goods. This led to more frequent shortages in POC neighborhoods. Stores in segregated areas also engaged in discriminatory practices by prioritizing white customers when distributing ration goods. Unfortunately, the voices of people of color were often not heard or considered during the implementation of government rationing policies. Now that we know a little more historical background about the recipe we're making today, we're ready to bake some cookies. I've lined up all the ingredients we'll need: shortening, an egg, molasses, ginger, cloves, cinnamon, and baking soda, salt, flour, and hot water. For the equipment, we'll need a large bowl, a lightly greased baking pan, a spatula, and a whisk. I've melted the shortening and beaten the egg. And we're going to mix these two ingredients together with the molasses. Then, once you've mixed those ingredients together very well, you mix together all the dry ingredients, and then add all the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients, adding them alternatively with hot water. Now that we have all our ingredients together mixed into the dough, I'm going to pour it into our lightly greased baking pan. Now that we have our dough in our lightly greased pan, I'm going to put it in the oven for 45 minutes at 350 degrees. So our cookies are done and they smell divine. So I'm going to go ahead and take them out of the oven and let them cool for a bit. And now for the big reveal. Let's see how these turned out. The fork goes through really easily. So there's a slight crust on the top, and it's really chewy in the middle. And I could really taste the notes of the ginger, the cinnamon, the cloves. And what's really neat about it is that if you remember, it's sugarless. But the flavor here reminds me of brown sugar, which is the molasses, but it's funny how you can kind of link those cognitively in your head. This is fabulous. Highly recommend it. Please try. Thanks again for joining us as we travel through history to taste test vintage recipes. Please let us know what you think in the comment section below, or let us know about a recipe that you think would be good for us to prepare in the future. We'll see you next time.